And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. We're gonna be alone in this car? This week we're releasing our 5th Car Trek series over on Tavarish's channel, but in each series we create a car buying premise and then we build 5 or 6 episodes around it. And so this one is about our story arc from our dream cars to our first cars, and we had an awful lot of fun, and that's really what I'm most proud of with Car Trek. I love the product that it becomes, but it really is, in all honesty, the three of us coming together to have the most fun we possibly can, and we really appreciate the opportunity from you, the audience, and from Auto Tempest, the sponsor. So to make Car Trek work, please do go over today, search for your favorite car or your next car or your dream car on Auto Tempest, because it is what makes Car Trek possible. But as we open each Car Trek season, we always want to do something that's as intense or as interesting as we possibly can. And so for the 4th series, which was who could buy the coolest Ferrari for the price of a Camry, we thought it would be cool to kind of up the stakes, and if we eliminated that criteria, what would be the coolest Ferrari you could buy? And we actually had an agreement made with an owner in Dallas of a Ferrari F40, so we were starting the series there, and he said that we could borrow it to shoot the intro in. Now this is only going to become the first 2, 3, 4 minutes of the series, but the opportunity to start something off with a car like that was obviously amazing. Unfortunately, for the last year and a half, there has been a global tire shortage for Ferrari F40s, and so while the car was ready, the tires that were on it were very old. 3 of them came in time, 1 wasn't, and so we just couldn't drive it. But the owner was very generous, and he let Freddie drive his Pista to open the series, and that was a whole lot of fun. But regardless, we wanted to find something similar or even better for our 5th series, which again was going to be us driving our dream cars on an adventure leaving from Amelia Island. And through YouTube and everything else that we've done in life, fortunately, each of us has been able to buy our dream car. My manual LP640, Tyler's SLS as an inspiration from the 300 SL that he loves, and Freddie in his manual transmission DBS. He says he's not living out a James Bond fantasy, but obviously that's what it is. But all great cars, and we were really excited to take cars that would probably make it to wherever we were going to go this time around. And so we thought, what would be one of those ultimate dream cars that we might be able to wrangle from the field of Amelia Island that we could open this series with? We knew there was going to be a CLK GTR there. Curated was going to have an F50 there they thought we might be able to use. I mean, every kind of amazing car was represented. But we also heard that the Miles Collier collections at the Revs Institute were bringing their McLaren F1. Now, the most interesting thing about that McLaren F1 to me personally is that it's chassis 22. And I mentioned that one several times as my ultimate car that got away, because in 2005, when I was trying to start Supercar Rentals, my exotic car rental company, I was trying to buy a high mileage 360 Spider or a Gallardo, and Wyclef Jean was selling his high mileage, Euro imported, not in great shape 360 Spider. But it was being sold along with his McLaren F1 and his Pagani Zonda, all for $900,000. And so in that equation, the F1 was probably 600, the Zonda was 300, and honestly, you just got the Ferrari for free for buying the whole lot. Because at that time, they were cool cars, but nobody was paying that much for them as used automobiles. And so obviously, as a college student at the time, I didn't have the money. I didn't even have the money for the 360. I was going to be financing that. But I really tried to find an investor to put up all the money so we could just flip the others, and effectively I would own that for free. But there was no real roadmap as to how I would have kept the car. But Miles Collier is the person who bought it around that time. So obviously since then we've seen a McLaren F1 sell for more than $20 million, and clearly he owns it for a whole lot less. But he ended up sending it back to the factory, changing it from its navy blue over white color scheme to this gorgeous green that happens to be very close to my Mercy's color, and he was going to be bringing it to Amelia Island. It normally lives in his museum in Naples along with his incredible collection of cars, but it was going to be there. Now, how do you get to drive somebody's McLaren F1? Because we've seen many other YouTubers, even Top Gear at times, talk about how uninsurable driving for the sake of a production or really just driving at all one of these cars can be. And so obviously we don't have insurance that would remotely cover that. I don't personally have the ability to pay for it if I were to break it. However, if there's any way to drive a McLaren F1, I want to make it happen. And so we start reaching out to their mechanic, who we had a mutual acquaintance with, to their marketing guy, to the people at the Amelia Island Concours, to everybody we possibly could that might be able to have it in. And Chris Brewer was really advocating from the Amelia Island Concours on our behalf to the curator of the collection and to everybody else who we could possibly be a way in. And we finally heard back just a few days before the concours, and they said, tell us exactly what you want to do, and how much exposure you anticipate, and are you gonna do anything crazy with it? And so I sent a very exhaustive email saying, no, this is exactly what we might need. Honestly, I just needed to drive it probably 200 feet in order to convince for camera that I was driving it. And they were like, okay, well, we could probably arrange that as long as one of our guys in one of the seats and stuff like that. And I mean, we're just doing backflips, obviously, at the prospect of being able to feature a McLaren F1 in the series. And so we keep talking back and forth about when along the course of the weekend might be the best time to shoot, shuffling everything else that we needed to do around that. And amazingly, the car was going to be on display at the Cars and Coffee event. And it kind of evolved into, well, we'll shoot it right after that. Let us know exactly where it is, how many miles the car has to go to get there. And I mean, they're very open to driving the cars. They put a lot of miles on them and they take them to a lot of events. But obviously, this is not their anticipated use case with the cars. And so we're just trying to work the logistics, and we found a great kind of boat ramp and parking lot that was far enough away from the concours, from the Ritz-Carlton property, where most of the events are happening around. And we thought we might be away from the crowds enough that we could actually get some shots. Because everywhere they took the car this weekend, it was an amazing scene. I mean, people chasing the car with cameras, jumping out in front of it in the streets. It wasn't an easy car to move around because it was just such a highlight of the show. So we have the plan in place of when we're gonna have some access to the car, and we know it's gonna be limited, but obviously who cares? We're gonna shoot as much as we possibly can. Now, obviously this is all of our money, no object dream car, but I'm not gonna let them have the chance to drive it. I've been the one talking, trying to shrewdly negotiate our way into the driver's seat, and it will be me in that driver's seat. And honestly, they weren't terribly comfortable with signing their lives away for the chance to do so, even though I explained that I can't afford to break this thing, but if I ever do, I sure will try. And they were okay. They were really excited, honestly, to be helping us out with it, and they knew how grateful we were for the opportunity. And so then it became, well, the car has to be driven 5 or 6 miles from the concours to the boat ramp. We'll get it off the green, and then Ed, you can just hop in the driver's seat and take it there. So I'm not gonna drive it 200 or 300 feet just to sell the idea that I was actually holding the steering wheel, making it move. I'm gonna drive it a real distance. Holy cow. Then it becomes, well, we're actually going to use that so that our guy can be in there, the guy who kind of stays with the car, and explain everything to you, make sure you're comfortable with it, and make sure that you're doing a good job taking care of it. And then he can ride in your camera car, and the other two can ride in the passenger seats. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. We're going to be alone in this car. And I cannot explain our gratitude to the Miles Collier Collections at Revs Institute. You need to go check them out. He's writing an amazing book. He's going to come here and tell some stories. So they let us drive this car by ourselves. And he told me, the curator, Scott, he said, the tires on it are only good for up to 150 miles an hour with the air pressure that we have in them, so please don't exceed that. I was like, okay. I mean, literally, we thought we were going to put this thing around a parking lot. We're getting to actually drive it. So he hops in our camera car with the rig mounted on the side, and we're blasting up and down this bridge, honestly, for a couple of hours. And we'd kind of mapped out a route of where we wouldn't have to do any complicated turns and things like that, but we kind of just kept getting to do it. And eventually, I just want to keep this whole thing going. I end up giving my keys to the Mercy to their guy so he can kind of follow along. And he loved that car, so we are having an absolute blast. And obviously the question is, does the McLaren F1 live up to the hype? And I have to say, absolutely. I mean, it's obviously going to be a 90s car, but it was so well built. It sounded so good. It was built with such high quality materials with no consideration whatsoever given to how much stuff cost. It was the ultimate car that could be built at the ultimate time of impressing upon me how cool cars were. I mean, I'm 10 years old when this car starts to become popular, and there's nothing that could ever be cooler to me. And, you know, I've driven a Bugatti Veyron, I've driven a Koenigsegg, I've driven a lot of amazing cars, and some do, some don't sort of live up to that hype, but the F1 so massively exceeded it. I mean, the presence of the car, the feel of the car, the performance of the car is all magical. I will say it's remarkably similar in the way that it drives to my LP640. They've got a very similar amount of horsepower, 627 for the McLaren, 631 for the Mercy, both obviously 6-speed manual transmissions, both very, very analog, no significant electronic nannies to step in, and, you know, similar in terms of performance. Obviously, there's no downforce really on the F1, and so it goes a bit faster on the top end, but in terms of mid-range acceleration, very, very similar, and we just had a blast. It was one of those just pinch yourself moments. It was kind of this, you know, mountaintop moment. of our pursuit of the automotive hobby. And that's really what we were trying to do with this Car Trek series. Talk about all the way from our first cars up to the dream cars that we've been able to buy, and really express the gratitude to you guys, the audience, for helping to make that happen. And the combination of the generosity of the Revs Institute, the generosity of Auto Tempest in supporting Car Trek, and certainly everybody who has clicked to watch and hopefully enjoyed the series has just given us such an unbelievable opportunity to do stuff like this. And throughout the series, we get to do a lot of sort of once-in-a-lifetime things related to our dream cars and other cars. And I hope that you love Car Trek 5. We're actually just about to head out to shoot Car Trek 6 around the end of the month. And so what an unbelievable journey it's been, but the McLaren F1 was it. It is still the ultimate car. I have no idea how I roadmap my financial trajectory to somehow intersect with whatever a McLaren F1 happens to be worth at the time, but it certainly is the goal. But honestly, just the chance to sit in it, to drive it, to have those few moments and really the few hours that we got to spend with this car, thanks to everybody who made that possible, was unbelievable. It is the ultimate car. It is so fast. It handles so well. The visibility is sublime. The presence, the doors, the engine, the gold foil, everything that we know to love about a McLaren F1 is honestly worth loving. And so it was the perfect way to start Car Trek 5. So head on over to Freddie's channel now and enjoy the series. Thanks for watching. We also want to thank Premier Financial Services for their support of this month's videos on VINwiki Car Stories. They're a great sponsor for the last 4 years, and they have a great program in their Simple Lease that allows you to minimize your down payment, minimize your monthly payment, take advantage of the tax benefits of leasing while still the ability to move in and out of cars and accumulate equity. It's the best program in the world of exotic car financing, and we really appreciate their support of VINwiki.